welcome. You're watching Primetime Debate. We're live on Bloomberg Quint. And let's start off with our first conversation. Data security with the Aadhaar platform has become a big talking point yet again after a report on znet.com highlighted a potential leak that could affect all Aadhaar card holders. This leak was not just restricted to a person's contact details, but also included services that are linked to a particular Aadhaar number. ZNet's report is based on the findings of Karan Saini, an independent security researcher. While the UIDAI has denied any leak in the system, the question remains, is the Aadhaar system really airtight, like the government claims, or are these fears overstated, or are they justified? To discuss this, I'm joined by the man himself, Karan Saini, the security researcher who first highlighted this potential lapse in security, and of course by Saket Modi, co-founder and CEO of Lucidius Tech and, well, a well-known cybersecurity expert. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Now, at the start of this conversation, I want to make it very clear that we are only trying to figure out what these technical revelations are, and we're not talking about anything, no speculation. This is only based on Karan's research, and that's why I'll start with Karan. Karan, I was hoping to get you in on video, but we've gotten you in on the phone line. Thanks so much for joining us live, Karan. But my first question to you is if you could explain to our viewers, not in tech geek lingo, but in simple English, what your revelations brought to light. Is this particularly, is this a worrisome situation, or was this, well, just one shortcoming in a larger system?
Okay, so it's not just one shortcoming, and when you look at the flow itself, I'll actually explain the the technicality of it. So the issue actually lied on an API that Indian had on their website, indian.co.in, from where you could query an Aadhaar number, and you could query, actually it would look it up in the DBTL database, which is the direct benefit transfer of LPG scheme. And if there was a corresponding account with that, if there was a LPG connection with that corresponding Aadhaar, it would return the consumer number, their distributor, the company which was responsible for that distributor, still IOCL or Indian, their name, and in cases where they had their bank account connected with their Aadhaar, it would reveal their bank name and the date of sealing.
Right.
Yeah.
No, so Karan, it's interesting that you mentioned these things because there was a rebuttal by the UIDAI as well, who have put out, a number of tweets which are actually addressing a situation like this, and they claim it's safe and secure. But has there been any development? Because I know this story, was brought to light. It's been in the works for a while now, but it was brought to light over the weekend, and they've mentioned we refute the reports in a certain section of the media source from ZNet, which quote a person purportedly claiming to be a security researcher, that a state-owned utility company has vulnerability which can be used to access huge amounts of Aadhaar data, including banking details. It goes on, and we'll keep playing those particular tweets. The second tweet says there's no truth in this story, as there's been absolutely no breach of the UIDAI's Aadhaar database. Aadhaar remains safe and secure. And he says the story is totally baseless, false, and irresponsible. It purports that the database of a state utility company containing its customer details, that's Indian in this particular example, such as bank account numbers, consumer number, Aadhaar number, not the biometrics, has vulnerability. Now these are things that they're saying, but about that particular endpoint on Indian and the one that you actually exposed, the vulnerability at its origin, has there been any update? Does that still exist?
Yes. So actually, right around the time of UIDAI's statement on Twitter, it was the endpoint was taken offline. It was replaced with the 404 webpage.
Okay.
And in terms of that denial itself by the UIDAI, it should be noted that it was never claimed that the CIDR itself was hacked, or that there was a web shell on UIDAI's website.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the report, it was claimed that the state-owned utility company, which was later revealed to be Indian after we found that it was fixed, they had an issue where, due to a lapse in their security, Aadhaar data was at risk.
Right.
And that's something I still stand by myself, and so does ZDNet, because even they released a statement countering UIDAI's denial.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that, and I want you to hold that thought, and we're going to delve deeper into this this particular bit, Karan, because I also have Saket Modi with us. Saket, thanks as always for joining us live on the show. Saket, those are some of the things Karan's research brought to light, and that particular endpoint, well, he is getting an error, a 404 error on it now, so it seems like it's been shut down. And perhaps it's been shut down by the company, because I'd imagine that this vulnerability was exposed. What is your take on it? Now I know that usually you do think, that some of these claims are overstated about Aadhaar, and I don't want to get into that at all. Do you think that this is a genuine concern, that there are vulnerabilities every now and then that arise that do point to the shortcomings of the technology of the system?
Absolutely. Ayush, first of all, like always, it's a pleasure to be with you here. Thank you for having me. To the point which Karan is making, I think it's a very, very genuine concern when it comes to the security of the API that basically are accessing what he very rightly mentioned, a database which is containing the details of the beneficiaries of the DBT, that is Direct Benefits Transfer Scheme. However, and again, the only misreporting piece which I've seen in the last few days happening with this is the DBT has nothing to do with the servers of UIDAI. So there is basically a API that is between the utility company, which is Indane in this case, and the DBT database, which in this case is being maintained through the NPCI, which is the National Payments Corporation of India, and it's basically that API through which you can replay certain things, and it is really at the side of Indane that this needs to be hardened as an API that needs protection. So absolutely there is since Karan is talking with proofs, and ZDNet also claims that they've seen him in action, I believe that this is a concern that needs to be addressed. However, this is purely at the level of the DBT database and has nothing to do with the UIDAI servers or the data which is stored within the UIDAI.
Okay, Saket, but the fact that at the end of the day, when he was particularly running these tests, and there's a video that he's also put out explaining how he's done it, we're only doing it showing it to you for illustrative purposes very shortly. The fact being that the endpoint didn't just pull data on these utility providers' customers. That API that you're talking about, Saket, allowed access to Aadhaar holders' information, and also telling you about their connections with other utility companies, also telling you about which banks that they banked with. Yes, there's no more in terms of his research, in terms of, bank account details, but the banks that we have banked with, or the banks being used for these particular benefits. The fact being that the case that is being made out, maybe it's not it is not as much of a security breach, but in terms of a user, and when it comes to my privacy, Saket, isn't that a concern? That at the end of the day, if someone has to profile me, we're living in an age of Cambridge Analytica. If someone has to profile me, or if there's a situation like identity theft, there is enough data, or at least one chunk of data, which could perhaps incriminate me in any situation.
Absolutely, Ayush, and I do not disagree with you. There is a degree of information which is being provided, which is personally identifiable information to a small extent, because you are getting the names of the Aadhaar holders, which I understand will be more on the side of Indane where the flaw is at. The database that they are querying, and they are being able to find out that one particular unique information which we have not been hearing in the previous Aadhaar hacks is the name of the bank that Aadhaar card holder or Aadhaar number owner is banking with. Now, this is a facility provided by the NPCI, which is the National Payments Corporation of India, with absolute known facts. You can use that service yourself using something called USSD, which is the *99 hash feature which is available on your phone. If you dial that and enter anybody's Aadhaar number, including my Aadhaar number, Ayush, you will be able to see what is the primary bank account that it is linked to for any DBT subsidies that, if I am expecting any. The reason why this was provided by the NPCI was only one, that if somebody has multiple bank accounts in multiple banks, he is able to go ahead ahead and know what bank account that particular subsidy is coming to, and he doesn't have to go to a particular kiosk in a particular office and find that information. And all you find out is the name of the bank and nothing else. So if you talk about the degree of information being provided out here, think of it like this: when you give a check to somebody which might be a vendor to you, who you don't know whether you can really trust or not, but you want to cut a 5,000 rupee check, not only is the name of your bank, but your bank account number, your signature, all of that goes away when you provide that check. However, we are okay with that. So I do not see that it's a huge concern. However, this shouldn't have happened in the first place is what I totally believe in, and I believe this needs to be addressed for sure.
Well, Saket, those are some interesting points, and I want to take some of those points that you made, obviously defending it to the best of your abilities. But Karan, I want your take on what your concerns were when you were actually exposing this vulnerability, so to speak.
Of course.
The main one being that I think the question that you seem to be asking, based on our conversation also, was that why does Indian, as a gas company, need to know who you bank with, especially when you've not been a customer of theirs? Are these some of your concerns with your findings?
Yeah. So I'm glad that Saket mentioned the NPCI and how you could also call the USSD number, which lets you query whether an Aadhaar number is connected with the bank account, and it tells you which bank that the person will be using. So this issue, exactly the Indian endpoint, which allowed for this to happen, so how it happened, how it would potentially be abused in a massive way could be is someone runs a cycle of Aadhaar numbers through it, and I know since it's 12 digits long, that's going to be a lot of numbers, but I myself, when I tested it, I found that using just the first 8 digits of my own Aadhaar number, and for the last 4 digits running through a cycle from 0000 to the end of 9999.
The different permutations that you can come up with.
So when you run an attack like that, and there's no rate limiting on the API itself, and if that means that the data is coming from NPCI, that would potentially mean that you could just keep running that attack until you cycle through a huge amount of numbers.
Yeah.
And you will have data on people that you shouldn't have that easy access of data to.
No, absolutely. Right.
Yeah. I wanted to just So when it said that it's not an Aadhaar issue, that's the fact of the matter is that because Indian allows for a lookup using your Aadhaar number, and it returns your, in cases where you have an LPG connection and your data is available, it returns your consumer name and number, and even your bank if you have it.
Right.
And the date of actual linkage when you connected your Aadhaar to your bank.
Right.
Does this not open room for financial fraud once someone knows your name, your consumer number, using which from Indian's own website, actually, you can locate the home address in some cases.
Right.
Yeah.
No, Karan, those are some interesting points, and I want Saket's views on this as well. Saket, the fact that you're giving this is the classical data debate, and I think this calls for a larger conversation on another day. Today we're perhaps short on time, but I want your take on some of the concerns that Karan just voiced. Essentially the fact that, doesn't this open up Pandora's box? Doesn't this mean that there could be some sort of identity theft, some sort of financial fraud, the kind of data that we're talking about? And also, it's not just, Karan's done one bit of research. I remember the last time we spoke, it was Troy Hunt, the Australian researcher, who had actually come on the show, and he spoke about how Aadhaar's portal by itself, or the UIDAI web page, let's be very specific, did not run several secure protocols, or perhaps had some lapses, which you also spoke about. These issues, I know that the central database, the core information is protected, your biometrics seem to be protected, that seems to be the government's argument. But the fact that this peripheral information, which perhaps I would want to be secured if it's my private data, isn't that a concern for consumers, for Aadhaar holders who are watching, that these things are at the peripheral level from a third party perhaps are getting leaked out, or perhaps are going in the wrong hands?
Absolutely, Ayush. I agree with both you and Karan. I'm not saying this is not a worry at all. I am saying that there is a way by which you can profile people with the given information that is there. Addressing it more specifically, what Karan mentioned about something called a brute force attack. If you really see, if you are to get the permutation and combination of 12 digits in each space has a probability of 10 characters that you can bring in. That's 0 to 9. That's 10 to the power 12 permutation combinations that you can apply. And he very rightly mentioned that he's only talking about the last 4 digits, but that is still 10 to the power 4, which is a fairly large number. But coming back, should that happen? Should the rate limiting should not be there? No, it should absolutely be there. It's a good security practice to have. Is it being followed right now? No, it's not, and it's a concern, and we should talk about it. But let's not forget that we've actually had the PayPals and the Yahoos and the Facebooks or the Microsofts of the world, which have had a severity CVSS 10 vulnerabilities being reported on a fairly daily basis. When you talk about 6 monthly, 12 monthly things, we saw the WannaCry attack, which happened through the Eternal Blue, which was a SMB 10, SMB service vulnerability. So I'm just saying technology is prone to attacks. I'm happy that such things are happening in India, because this will push our authorities to be not lazy and really do things about security, and while leave even the low severity findings or vulnerabilities out there. So I'm totally in sync with you. However, the impact on that, it's like the entire Gmail's usernames being coming out in the public. So can that be used to spam people? Yes, it can be used, but it's not even remotely close as the passwords of those billions of usernames that would have come out. So yeah, that's where we are.
No, absolutely, Saket, and I really appreciate that these are the views that we're sharing. The fact that we're having this conversation goes to show that, well, all of us in India, the narrative has changed and it's evolved, and everyone's a little more aware. Karan, thanks so much for joining us. My only grouse, we hope to get you in on video the next time around, or maybe in studio as well with Saket. Guys, thanks so much for joining us on this Primetime Debate, and stay tuned, because there's another interesting technology chat coming up.